Hello, and welcome to the Cloud Computing School YouTube channel. In this how-to video, we will show you how to enable multi-factor authentication, MFA, in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. There are two ways to activate MFA for a Microsoft 365 user. The recommended way is to use Microsoft 365 security defaults. Security defaults is a group of Azure AD settings which improve the overall user security posture of a Microsoft 365 organization. Microsoft 365 Security Defaults is enabled by default for any new M365 organization. You can validate this after signing up for a new M365 subscription by allowing 14 days to pass until you will be forced to provide supplementary contact information, such as your mobile phone and alternative email address, in order to configure MFA for your user. To validate that Security Defaults is enabled for your Microsoft 365 organization, go through the following steps. First, navigate in your browser to https://aad.portal.azure.com and log in with the credentials of your admin user. Then on the left side of the screen, click on Azure Active Directory, scroll down to Properties, and then at the bottom of the screen, click Manage Security Defaults. This is where you can enable or disable security defaults. If you want to enable security defaults, and the MFA feature that comes with it, click on Yes and then click Save. After having successfully enabled security defaults, you can log off from the portal, and then after a full log off is completed, you should try to log on again to any Office 365 service, such as, for example, office.com, by using your end user credentials this time. For the purpose of this demonstration, we have demo user john.doe. So, since the security defaults are enabled, this by design means that we also have MFA enabled, and this also means that the first 14 days have passed since the creation of this user. So, at this point in time, since we have MFA enabled, the system actually requests that we need more information to keep your account secure. So we cannot log on unless we first provide further supplementary information to enable MFA. So we click Next. At this point, we are forced to use an authenticator app. So we can either use the default Microsoft Authenticator app by downloading the app to our mobile phone from the Android or iOS marketplace, or we can choose to use a different authenticator app, like, for example, Sophos Authenticator or Twilio Authy. And then in this case, we click Next, and we will need to scan this QR code using our mobile authenticator. Same thing would happen if we were to choose the default Microsoft Authenticator app and simply chose Next on the first page. Again, we would have to scan the QR code, or if there is an issue with our camera, we can manually provide the code and URL information to the Microsoft or other mobile authenticator app so that we can generate a new radius entry in the mobile authenticator, and then click Proceed and enable the second factor by using the mobile authenticator phone. So this is the way to enable MFA using the available configuration for the security defaults. So up to this point, we have seen how we can enable multi-factor authentication for a Microsoft 365 user by enabling security defaults. And this is the Microsoft recommended way of enabling MFA. However, there might be special cases in which you don't want to have security defaults enabled, and you need to enable MFA on a per user basis. The second option is called Legacy per user MFA, and we will show you step by step how to configure it. First thing you have to do is you need to navigate to aad.portal.azure.com and log in with your Microsoft 365 administrator user. So the first thing you have to do is you have to go and disable security defaults by clicking on Azure Active Directory, scroll down to Properties, then click on Manage Security Defaults, and in the Enable Secure Default section, click No. Choose a reason why you're doing it, and then click Save. After security defaults are disabled, then we need to optionally enable other second factor authentication options besides the default, which is the Microsoft Authenticator or a third-party mobile authenticator. So how do we do that? We go to All Services, and we click Security, and we click Azure AD Authentication Methods. From this point, we can enable, as you can see, these additional authentication methods. And more specifically, we have a FIDO2 security key, Microsoft Authenticator, text message, temporary access pass, and certificate-based authentication preview. In this case, we would like to enable the text message option. So we click on Enable Yes, and then we can target it to all users or specific users. So for instance, we can see that we need to enable this for our user John Doe. Click Select, and then click Save. So that means that the text message authentication option is now enabled for our user John Doe, which we're using for the purpose of this demonstration. So after having enabled this additional authentication option, what we need to do is we need to navigate to admin.microsoft.com and expand the user section, go to active users, and click on multi-factor authentication. This will lead us to the multi-factor authentication page, from where we can see the active status from an administrative point of view of the MFA for each user. So in this case, we have John Doe, and for that user, we can, for example, disable two-factor authentication. We can re-enable it. We can even manage user settings. And there are some interesting options here. We can require the selected users to provide contact methods again. We can delete all existing app passwords generated by the selected users, and we can restore multi-factor authentication on all remembered devices. So what we need to do before we instruct the user to enable their MFA from their side is to make sure that the option here, the MFA option for that specific user, is set to enabled. Then we also keep a note of this URL here, which we will need to send to the user for them to enable MFA. Normally, the MFA pop-up screen will prompt the user to provide additional authentication options the first time they log in after we have enabled and enforced MFA setup on their account. However, we can use this link to send it via email to our end users and instruct them to follow the link to set up their MFA. So after we have clicked on Enabled Multi-Factor Authentication, we can validate here that the status of the MFA for this user is set to enabled. So now we can log off as an administrator user. So let's log off. And then we will simulate being our user. So what we'll do is we will navigate to aka.ms/MFA setup. We will log in with the account of our end user, which is john.doe. Next, we'll provide our first factor, which is our password. And then we're at the point here where the system says that your organization needs more information to keep your account secure. At this point, we click Next. And on this screen, we can see that besides the default Microsoft Authenticator or third-party Authenticator app as a second factor, we do have the option to choose another method. And the reason for that is that we have set up alternative authentication methods from the administrator side to allow for simple text messages to be used as a second factor. So we choose this option instead. I want to set up a different method. And then from the drop-down box, we choose the phone method. Click Confirm. On the next page, we set up contact mobile phone. Choose text me a code and then click Next. We should receive an SMS message. And we should provide the code sent to us via SMS. Click Next. Now the SMS is verified and the phone has been registered successfully. We click Done. Now that means that we now have text messaging on our mobile phone as a second factor for our Microsoft 365 login. Optionally, we can now click on this page, click Add Sign-in Method, and we can choose to generate an app password. The reason being is that some legacy applications, like for example, old Apple Mail applications or Outlook applications, may not work properly with Microsoft 365 MFA, and in this case, we need to use an app password for these applications. We click Add, then we create an app password name, for example, Legacy Outlook, and we click Next. Then we copy this app password and we keep it safe in case we need to use it with our legacy Outlook application for this example. Then we click Done. Now from this point onwards, if we sign out and we need to sign in again, let's fully sign out and then we will try to sign in to the user portal, which is myaccount.microsoft.com, the user account page. So we need to authenticate as John Doe. We provide our password, and then here it is, the second factor that we have set up using our mobile phone. So we need to text our mobile phone, receive the SMS message, and provide the code received by Microsoft. Click Verify, and now we're successfully authenticated using multi-factor authentication. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Cloud Computing School YouTube channel for more videos like this.